Hello, listeners. This is Anna Bartley's final presentation for MUHL 4300 World Music History, and I'm here to talk about Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is a beautiful developing country that is rich in oil exports and cultural heritage. The capital, Baku, or Baku, is known for its striking, modern, flame tower skyscrapers, juxtaposed against the ancient Maiden Tower. A mixture of past and future, this freshly independent country also has a special pride for its music. Azerbaijan is famous for Mugam. Mugam has been Azeri before Azerbaijan was even its own country. It shaped the development and culture of this territory, even and especially through occupations by other countries like the USSR. Although there is still traditional performance today, there are several significant flavors that have incorporated elements of the traditional with other genres of music. In 20th century Azerbaijan, despite Soviet and national government efforts to reject outside influences, the most drastic transformations upon Mugam have been a reflection of its response to Western culture. Culturally intertwined with nearby states like Armenia, Georgia, Turkey, and Iran, Mugam has developed from similar traditions like Persian dastgah, Turkish makam, Arabic makam, and even Indian raga. These intense musical forms initially came out of Islam and convey strong emotional and poetic aesthetics. They are passed down orally from teacher to student based on melodic fragments stemming from regional music styles, usually religious melodies, chants, and folk songs, that are incorporated into each musician's own unique representation. Mugam gains her independence as a result of a desire to create a strong national identity in Azerbaijan. At the beginning of the 1800s, Russia took over previously Iranian Azerbaijan. This began an influx of Russian influence that was simultaneously adopted and resisted by Azeris. There was a modernization/westernization that the Russians brought with them that was juxtaposed against a rising Azerbaijani nationalism. By 1870, Mugam has been established as an independent genre and develops unique modal, melodic, and structural characteristics that distinguish it from parallel genres. In her review of a Mugam record, Inna Narodskaya wrote, "The length of the Mugam composition can vary from a few minutes to several hours, and it incorporates tesnifs, folk songs, and rengs, dance-like pieces. Instrumental Mugams have no direct association with poetry, but they express poetic style in instrumental declamation, combined with lyrical and highly ornamented episodes." Mugam is typically performed with a singer, a tar, a lute-like instrument, a kamancha, a bowed string instrument, and some form of percussion, usually gaval, also known as a daf, which is a drum shaped like a huge golden Oreo. Not only was the form of Mugam distinct, but the tar was also revolutionized by an Azeri musician, Mirza Sadiq Asad Oglu, also known as Sadiq Jan, who lived from 1846 to 1902. He was born in Shusha-Karabakh, now modern-day Nagorno-Karabakh, a town known for its musical heritage and culture. Around 1870 to 75, this musician/composer increased the number of strings from 5 to 13, changed the number of frets, added the zabul fret for better sega performance, sega being one of the several modes of Mugam, and changed the performance posture of tar playing from the original Iranian, which was held on the lap, up to the chest, increasing volume, resonance, and connection to the instrument. Sadiq created modern tar practice and forever distinguished Azeri tar from other countries' versions. He is also famous for creating an ensemble in Shusha that included singers, instrumentalists, and students from not only Azerbaijan, but also Armenia and Georgia. Now, that may seem fairly normal, but this is actually huge. Armenia and Azerbaijan, although geographical neighbors, are known to be very bitter enemies. They both claim the modern-day Nagorno-Karabakh territory, where Shusha is located, as their cultural and historical heritage, and have waged violent and bloody war over it. Even to this day, these countries have bad blood. So the fact that Sadiq not only encouraged people from all three countries to be in the same room together, but also to make music, is an incredible feat. He proved that music is more important and has the ability to rise above conflict. He was a force for peace throughout his life, as well as becoming known as the father of the tar. His revolutions to the tar enabled Mugham to stand on its own legs and become distinct from other countries' strains. There are many different modes which are disputed across different sources, indicating lesser and greater modes, mistransliteration, perhaps, and multiple styles stemming from oral master-student pedagogy. Each mode is associated with a certain emotion. These modes encompass a large range of performance and were traditionally played for two special occasions, the toy, or wedding, and the MUHL, a private gathering of connoisseurs. These were known to be secular celebrations. All throughout this time, Mugham is a central part of Azeri life. Then, in the 20th century, Azeri ears slowly began to turn westward. The first major combo for Mugham was with European opera. In 1885, Uzeyir Hajibeyov was born in Shusha, again where Sadiq was born. He was known as the father of Eastern classical music. He became well known as a composer, conductor, publicist, and playwright. He even wrote the national anthem that Azerbaijan uses today. In 1907, he worked with librettist Ceyhun Hajibeyov, his brother, and created the opera Layli and Majnun, based on a poem by the same name, written by Fazuli. This work premiered January of 1908 in the Tagiev Theater in Baku, and became known as the first opera of the Muslim East. But why was it such a big deal? Not only did Hajibeyov bring opera to Azerbaijan, he was the first person to incorporate Mugham into opera by including the expected choral harmonic music, while also including many modes and opening up large sections of the work for Mugham improvisation. He even had a whole section of tars in the orchestra. This synthesis of East and West was unprecedented and became wildly successful. This opera is still performed even today. As time went on, things began to move globally. As mentioned briefly above, Azerbaijan was subject to many different ownerships throughout the years, only arriving at permanent independence in 1991. Having drilled the world's first oil rig in 1848, Baku, Azerbaijan's capital, was an oil-rich treasure trove that many world powers gazed upon hungrily, especially through wartime. In 1920, the USSR came knocking and adopted Azerbaijan into its family. With that came a great deal of restrictions, particularly concerning artistic freedom and expression. This made things difficult for Hajibeyov, and almost got him killed. In 1938, he wrote a new opera called Korolu. Originally, the plot was based on Kaveh the Blacksmith, which was a foreign tale about a mythical poor Persian who overthrew an evil government, which could easily have been mistaken for anti-Stalinist ideals. This may have spelled the end for Hajibeyov, so the plot was changed. Thank goodness he did, because Stalin himself decided to attend a performance of it in Moscow. Instances like these, where musicians had to alter their expressions just to save their own lives, became more and more common. Other great Azeri musicians, like Baku-born Mstislav Rostropovich, also dealt with the cruelty and restrictions of the USSR. Despite anti-Western sentiment from the government, a new form of Mugham steadily crept through the cracks: jazz. Jazz came to Azerbaijan shortly after it came to America, and fluctuated in and out of notoriety with the rise and fall of the USSR. And yet, it became a huge part of Azeri culture. Let's take a look at another beloved Azeri musician, Vakif Mustafazadeh. Mustafazadeh was born in 1940. He was classically trained in piano by his mother, who noticed his talent early on. In his young life, jazz was entirely banned. Listening secretly on shortwave radio, he and his friends would grab what snippets they could, and then try to recreate them on the piano. With Stalin's death in 1953, the ban was slowly lifted. Mustafazadeh had an affinity for jazz, and eventually developed his own style, which combined jazz and traditional Mugham music. These two seemingly opposite genres share features that facilitate their coalescence. Both are rooted in improvisation, both incorporate rhythmic freedom, both come from a background of oppression, with Mugham being an ancient relic and jazz a forbidden capitalist influence. Mustafazadeh found these similarities and joined them in incredibly virtuosic ways. However, his decision to pursue this new kind of music made his life very difficult due to the lingering taboo hanging over jazz, the lack of support for his music, and criticism of his work. He was rejected for jobs, teaching positions, and had tours cancelled because he was compelled by his own calling to not stop performing his creations. Despite all of this, he kept playing, and his contributions helped Jazz Mugham break out of Azerbaijan and become known worldwide. Due to the extreme duress he underwent, fighting for this music to be heard, he died at 39 years old on stage during a performance. His daughter now carries on his legacy. Being in Baku especially enabled this fusion, as the thriving city's prosperity from oil brought a multitude of ethnicities to its shores. There, improvised piano music was indigenized, and the step to jazz after that was a short one. In the mid-1950s, despite Cold War resentment, almost every club in Baku had its own jazz ensemble. Although it was forbidden, jazz propagated throughout the city and thrived on anti-Soviet sentiment. This, coupled with the continuation of nationalism and self-identity, encouraged the contentious music to spread. Over the years, Baku has become sort of a jazz mecca and retains the proud indignance that it had during the occupied years. Now that Azerbaijan has complete autonomy after ridding itself of Soviet influence in 1991, Mugham is free to develop into even more flavors. One can see the effects of Mugham enter into many other genres, including rock, electronic, and hip-hop music. A quick YouTube search yields tons of home experimentation with different styles, beats, moods, etc. As time moves on, one can expect to see some of these trickle into mainstream media, given the path that jazz mugam has taken. Although the sanctity of mugam, as it is traditionally played, is still honored and remains its true form, having the freedom to explore new sounds brings us all closer together. The original world powers, especially in Western Europe and America, have often bled over into other countries, whether by accident or by force. Even though the West has had a profound impact on these smaller countries, the average American could hardly name where Azerbaijan is, let alone identify mugam out of an RL lineup. However, with the advent of the internet, our world is shrinking. Mugam is spreading out to popular and easy-to-access platforms like Spotify and ever-expanding YouTube. This global melting pot, where you can put anything out there for the world to see, enables poorer countries to have a voice and share their customs with people who otherwise would have never known they existed. In turn, popular music genres like pop and rock and EDM and rap are forming new blends by mixing with traditional folk songs and cultural music traditions. With how mugam itself has been developing over the last 100 years, under Western influence, it would not be a surprise to see it take on new forms and flourish even into US popular culture. Although some may see Western culture as oppressive in its own right, one can see the beauty in the resulting blends when musicians choose to mix elements of the familiar and the unfamiliar. As it stands now, there is still a disconnect between the harmonic and the melodic. The West still relies heavily on notated, predictable, precisely tuned chords to carry them from one place to another, while the East relies on improvisation, extensive training, and emotional connection to deliver an experience to the listener. Both are fantastic on their own, but once people can learn to love both kinds, imagine the endless possibilities that will develop out of it. Imagine a symphony not restricted by time signature or melodic structure. Imagine Taksim with 50 simultaneous players instead of one. Maybe it's awesome. Maybe it's crap. Maybe it's forbidden love. Maybe it's Maybelline. Only time will tell. Perhaps not in our lifetime, but in the future, musical combinations will be unbelievable. Here are my picture credits, and the rest of the credits will be in the text. Thank you for watching.